Okay. Hello, everyone. We're going to get started with our 1:30 work session. We had a little bit of excitement as we learned today that Commissioner Gambrell has been inducted into Leadership Cobb 2024's class. So, it's great. Well, with that, hopefully we'll have some more good news, excitement as we delve into our work session this May 23rd, 2023. We have two presentations that will be brought to us today. And the first one will be to receive an update from our Executive Director of the Atlanta Regional Commission. Please join us here at the podium.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How is everyone today? And congratulations, Commissioner. I want to thank, first of all, Chairwoman Cupid, as well as the full Board of Commissioners for the invitation to be here with you today. I'd also like to acknowledge and share my gratitude with Dr. Jackie McMorris, for our county manager, for including me on the agenda today. I'm really delighted to be here today. As you know, the Atlanta Regional Commission spans 11 counties, and our member jurisdiction includes as well the city of Atlanta within Fulton. But Cobb is a county that we are continuing as a regional commission to pay attention to. The community continues to grow, it continues to flourish, and it really is a testament to the strong leadership, both elected and appointed within this jurisdiction, that continues to work on behalf of the constituents in Cobb County. So before I get started, I wanted to acknowledge some of your Cobb County representatives that are on the Atlanta Regional Commission board. Cobb has a very strong voice on the Atlanta Regional Commission, and the penultimate voice is your chairwoman, Madam Lisa Cupid, who, if you know her, is always asking the right question at the right time to get the right discussions generated for the region on behalf of Cobb. She also serves as the vice chair of our TAQC, Transportation Air Quality Committee, and is also a member of the governance committee at the Atlanta Regional Commission. Her final role on the commission is as a member of our Homeland Security group, our urban area Homeland Security Group, and along with 4 other members of our board, lead that policy group. Mayor Ollie Clemens of Austell is another highly engaged board member, no matter what we do. Mayor Ollie is always present and participating. We can count on him to show up just at everything that we put together on behalf of ARC. Your citizen member, Michelle Cooper Kelly, is also on the governance committee at the Atlanta Regional Commission, and we're thankful for her service, not just on the board, but also in that leadership role. And Tangela Jones serves as well in a leadership role on the Atlanta Regional Commission Workforce Development Board. So again, Cobb County has a strong voice on regional matters by virtue of their role on several different committees and boards on the Atlanta Regional Commission, and we're very, very happy to have their voice and such a critical partnership with Cobb County as we do the work that we do at the Atlanta Regional Commission. And we do that work in order to move forward our vision for this region, which is one great region, as you see there together. Now, this vision is part of ARC's new strategic framework, which was launched earlier this year. Our vision is bold, but we also believe that it can be achieved if we work together as a region. What we do day to day at the Atlanta Regional Commission is toward achieving that region, right? Where everybody has an opportunity to succeed and where the economy and quality of life in this region is second to none. For today's discussion, I'll share with you some of the major investments that the Atlanta Regional Commission has made here in Cobb over the past year, and then I'll spend a little bit of time talking about the major update to our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is underway right now, and which is why I'm here, because it is really important for us to get every community's voice as a part of the development of the update of that plan. It does not make sense for us to sit as the leadership and or staff of the Atlanta Regional Commission and tell you what's best for your community. We want to hear from you, and so I'm here today to ask for your engagement in that process. So again, last year, ARC's impact in Cobb, ARC allocated over $191 million worth of state and federal transportation dollars for projects across the county. Those projects included closing gaps in the community's trail network along Atlanta Road and Mableton Parkway. And if you recall, there was also a huge investment in the widening of State Route 92 from Cobb Parkway all the way to the Paulding County line. There was also $2.2 million awarded through ARC to Cobb County to partner for senior services. And for those of you who are familiar with senior services provided by Cobb County, the funding goes to everything from senior transportation for critical doctor's visits, supermarket visits, and the like, to in-home services, which are so critical for our aging population, congregate meals, home-delivered meals. So really important investment in partnership with Cobb County Senior Services for delivering services to not just our seniors, but our disabled community as well. Our Innovative Livable Centers initiative continues to help create vibrant, walkable places all across the region, but particularly here in Cobb County. We have used those funds from the LCI initiative to create, or help the county create, Bob Callan Trail in the Cumberland CID. Earlier this month as well, we just awarded our 2023 round of LCI awards. We awarded $100,000 to the Cumberland CID to help that organization activate an underutilized public and private spaces to engage members of the community through the arts. We are very excited about that award and the projects that will come as a consequence of that. And through our Community Development Assistance Program, your staff will call it the CDAP program, affectionately. The Georgia Conservancy, that's where we link our local partners to either professional services directly from the Atlanta Regional Commission or pair you with a partner. In this instance, we paired you with the Georgia Conservancy, who is set to assist the city of Marietta with a study designed to encourage greater use of the Mountain to River Trail through art installation and other amenities. So these are just a few examples of how in the last year, ARC continues to invest in Cobb County and continues to strengthen our partnership with such a key member jurisdiction within our region. So, as I mentioned earlier, ARC is currently conducting a major update of its Metropolitan Transportation Plan. The plan is a multi-year, multi-jurisdictional plan that goes all the way out to 2050. But every 4 years, we take a fresh look at the planning work and the predictions that we have done. We re-engage in scenario planning to help us think through what are some of the emerging technologies and new things that we have to think about as we look into the future all the way to 2050. And if you can imagine what has gone on in the last 4 years, it's almost a perfect time to update that plan because the world as we know it has for sure changed. This plan update for every one of the counties you see represented across our metropolitan planning jurisdiction, it holds the promise of shaping the future of transportation, workforce development, aging services for all of those counties, and the same for Cobb as well. The Metropolitan Transportation Plan allocates over $173 billion across all parts of our counties through 2050. those are real dollars. And that's why it's so critical for us to have your input and your participation in the update of that plan. ARC serves as the federally designated metropolitan planning organization for that 20-county area. So if you think about it, frankly, any federal funds that are spent in transportation within our footprint has to come through ARC and through our planning process, and we do so through TIP updates, or Transportation Improvement Plan updates. Of course, all that we want to accomplish in the transportation plan cannot be accomplished alone. We engage with our partners. We work very closely with your transportation departments here. The transit, Cobb Link is also a very important partner of the ARC as well. But this is the big update that we have planned for this major transportation plan. And again, it's important because the pandemic has fundamentally changed the way we behave as a community, as a society, the way that we commute. And so it's important that we get the right input to think about how we are going to plan transportation and invest in transportation for the future in the region. So let's get into some specifics. As you can see here, there's no sort of single thing that the plan covers in a vacuum, right? Instead, we take a very balanced approach to how we tackle bottlenecks within the region and within the county. We think about how we expand transit opportunities to get people to commute in options other than single occupancy vehicle. We also want to make sure that we continue to keep the priority of developing vibrant, walkable communities all across this region and within Cobb. I want to take a second just to give you some examples of projects that are contemplated within this plan for Cobb County. The South Barrett Parkway Reliever specifically will ease congestion and improve safety on a key corridor in North Cobb County. The Chattahoochee River Multimodal Trail in West Cobb will help connect the community to the river and create a vital new regional destination. We've actually spent the morning meeting with FHWA. Our federal partners are monitoring the work that we do at ARC, and we talk to them a lot about this trail connectivity and the possibility that it brings to connect Cobb County through a trail network all the way down to the Beltline. So lots of trail work happening in Cobb, and we're proud to partner with this community to get that done. And transit, as I mentioned before, that's getting a major boost in this plan with the addition of ADA compliant sidewalks as well as ramp near Cobb Link bus stops. Very important project that we're working on with Cobb Transit. So again, the plan features many more projects. Just wanted to give you a taste of a few of them. I hope this helps you to understand the scope and the things that we're thinking about as we plan for transportation in the region and in Cobb specifically. Again, the planning effort comes at a time of significant change in our region. There's a lot at stake right now. For one, our region continues to grow. By 2050, our population projections tell us that the region will grow by 1.8 million people. And for context, that's like taking the entire metropolitan Nashville area and moving it to Metro Atlanta. We're a fast-growing Southeast region, and that's recognized nationally. Specifically for Cobb County, our forecasts show that the county will add over 100,000 residents by 2050. So that will take your current population all the way up to 915,000. Another big driver of change is technology. Electric vehicles, as well as the rise of teleworking and artificial intelligence, they promise to fundamentally alter the way that we live and work. And if you're paying attention to the federal government, this particular administration has out of this world aspirations as it relates to the installation of EV infrastructure over the next 5 years. And they are funding that effort through efforts like the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. So they're putting the money where the mouth is, and they want to see this technology implemented and deployed all across the United States. So technology is another huge driver of the change that we need to begin to plan for. And then again, as the COVID-19 pandemic has created a new normal for us in the last month, actually the last couple of weeks, the World Health Organization has downgraded it from a pandemic. It's no longer a pandemic, but in its wake leaves a change in lifestyle for all of us, the way that we commute, the way that we relate with each other, and the way that we now want everything delivered to our house overnight, as we got used to when we were home over the pandemic. Our peak travel times now are very different. People have a lot more flexibility about when they go into the office, how many days a week that we go into the office. It becomes harder for us as planners to predict how transportation will change. And so your input as folks on the ground and within the community, again, I'll reiterate, is going to be important to how we develop this plan. So far we've got electrification as a huge driver. We've got our growth and the growth here in Cobb as a driver. Pandemic as another driver of change. The other thing that we are having very robust conversations about now is climate change and how it is impacting our region. There was a time when we couldn't have a conversation in this region about climate change because there was a debate about whether it was a thing or not. We have gotten to the point now where everybody recognizes that whatever you call it, something is happening to our environment. And if we are not careful, if we do not plan for those changes, then we are going to be caught in a way that we're not prepared for. And so ARC is really taking a bold step into climate change planning and understanding the impacts and understanding how to prepare our communities to be resilient in the face of climate change. Our long-range plan can make investments in carbon reduction as well as mitigate extreme weather events like flash flooding. We also talk with our communities about the built environment, things like stormwater that are so important for us to plan for. And so climate change, again, is something that we have to begin to build resiliency around, and the federal government is demanding it. We can no longer go after discretionary funds without addressing climate as one of the principal things that we are working to tackle in our region. We are not going to be competitive if we're not talking about equity and if we're not talking about climate change and workforce development. It's just a new normal as it relates to access to discretionary funds at the federal level. So those are the things that are on our mind as we look to update this plan. And again, we have many, many different ways in which we are working to engage with the community to ensure that your voice is reflected there. So ultimately, what are we trying to achieve from a broader perspective? The goals of our Metropolitan Transportation Plan update, as you see here, directly align with our agency's strategic framework goals. Our aim is to promote healthy, livable communities, to make strategic investments in infrastructure, and to foster a competitive economy for our region. And this underscores how important transportation is in our region because it cuts across all of those goals. Robust and diverse stakeholder participation is key to all of the planning work that we do. And so again, you will see us come into communities and also look for different ways to engage with you. So as I alluded to earlier, our transportation planning work never occurs in a vacuum. The MTP incorporates each county's comprehensive transportation plan, which we work closely with the staff at Cobb County to develop, and we are in partnership with them in the development of that plan. And over the next 6 months, we'll be conducting community outreach around the region to understand each community's needs. And we've developed an online survey that, with your help, we can have a broad, wide range of responses to. We want every community to provide their input in this survey. We want wealthy communities, developing communities, communities with different types of needs that are walkable, ones with transit, ones without transit. We need the feedback from every community, so please encourage your constituents, commissioners, to engage with the Atlanta Regional Commission through this survey process and to look out for us when we come to your communities to talk with them about this long-range plan. I want to end today by again asking for your continued partnership as a member jurisdiction of the Atlanta Regional Commission, not just in this plan's updates work, but in everything that we do at the Atlanta Regional Commission. This plan is specific to transportation, but as you know, we also do workforce development, urban area security. We also do economic development. We're the economic development agency for the federal government. And so our verticals are vast and many, and we need each community to help us to both plan and determine what the right investments are. So we certainly need your partnership. And again, great representation on the board, but we'll be looking to engage our county managers as well as the rest of the board of commissioners on this journey. So please encourage your constituents to take the survey and continue to work with us as we encourage our communities to help us to build one great region together in Metro Atlanta. Chair Cupid, I am open to answer any questions if your time permits.
Yes, thank you for that thorough presentation. I'll turn things over to commissioners to see if they have any questions or comments.
Hello, Anna. How are you? It's good to
Hi,
see
Commissioner.
you. I don't have any questions. It was very thorough. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for your partnership with Cobb County. The ARC has done a fantastic job in a lot of different respects, some that the public may be aware of and some that they may not be aware of. And at the county, we have a housing task force. And your organization has been very helpful in providing data for us to help us shape policy around our housing initiatives. So I thank you for that. And also for your partnership for the Chattahoochee Riverline Trail, which will run through South Cobb. And that will spark a lot of economic development. The community is excited about it. The Trust for Public Land is excited about it. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you publicly for your support.
Gosh, thank you so much. Those are my two favorite things. It's like, you know, bringing a girl to the dance and playing her favorite song. The Chattahoochee Riverlands Project is a huge focus for us. Our emphasis on Section 2, which you're correct, the South Cobb area down into South Fulton County, is a huge opportunity that I think was somewhat of an unintended consequence. It was almost like a mistake for us to put the emphasis on that area for a couple of reasons. Number one, it definitely highlights uninvested or underinvested communities, which is somewhat of a requirement for federal funding now. So it puts us in a much better position to access discretionary funding. And more importantly, you think about where the access to land is as we face this housing crisis. If we can develop that trail as a transportation corridor, either through biking or walking from those parts of our region to the employment centers, it's a great opportunity to build workforce housing and have access to that transportation asset there. So thank you for mentioning that. I'm very excited about that project. And as you know, Chair Cupid served on our local Action Housing Committee. Last year, we have another round of that going on right now. And our goal is certainly to provide communities with the resources that they need to build housing strategies for themselves. The one thing the Atlanta Regional Commission never wants to do is to dictate policy for communities. We provide resources because what affordability looks like for Cobb County is different for what it looks like for Fulton and is different from what it looks like for Henry. So yes, you're right, Commissioner. We have positioned ourselves to be a resource provider and will continue to do so, but we will not be dictating policy for communities, and you're doing the hard work of that yourselves.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Again, thank you. Thank you for the ongoing partnership.
Yes.
And Appreciate your presentation, and we will get that link out.
Absolutely.
We have a weekly newsletter, and I believe Gary's here with communications, so this is something that we can easily add and encourage our citizens to participate in.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon. I think that presentation segues very well into our United Way presentation as we talk about the growth that is here in Cobb County and changes in how we grow over time. And so I'm very pleased that we have United Way of Greater Atlanta here with us, and that we also have Mr. Bill Cheeks kicking off our second presentation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and our Cobb County Manager, and so many other folks who are here today. My name is Bill Cheeks. I'm a longtime resident of Cobb County. I've been here since 1986, some in East Cobb, and since 1997, Commissioner Gambrill in your district in West Cobb. But I have been around and been involved in so many areas in our community. And I've been on the United Way board for over 20 years. United Way has been in Cobb for the last 50 years and in the metro area for over 100 years. Now, sometimes people ask, tell me, Bill, what exactly does United Way do? United Way has been, serving the community, but with the mission of engaging people and resources to drive sustainable, equitable improvement in the well-being of children, families, individuals in communities. I have spent all of these years focusing on how are our children doing? What's happening with our children? It was great to hear the presentation from ARC talking about how we are going to expand. But if we don't do a great job with our children and educating them and developing them and focusing on one of the things that we do at United Way, and that is child well-being. But the children aren't great if we don't focus also on the adults. And we're going to spend some time today talking about some work that has been done, that has been funded by United Way as we have looked at the Child Wellbeing Index. We know what's happening by area as far as the child well-being. We know which counties do the best and which counties do not. We know which part of the counties do better. In next month, we will share it with you, the child well-being, because we have just updated that information as to how are our children doing. I just read some information from the superintendent of Marietta Schools, and one of the things that they are focusing on there as far as our children, how are they reading? What's happening? If they are behind in third grade, we have real challenges. They'll have challenges in the future. How can we engage parents in helping their children? We have some of our partners here today that work with us because United Way puts together measures and matrix that we measure the different agencies that we fund, and we share with them what you need to do in the different areas. We also partner with the school systems. We have representatives from both of our school systems here on our board, and they give us information, provide us with data as to what's happening in the school system. Then we capture that data, and then we actually work with the different school system and the different agencies that we support through United Way to address the major issues that we see. So we started in 2017 with the child well-being, and here are the things that we focus on as far as the well-being. I'm not even using my slides here, right? Okay, I was so involved in talking about what we are doing, but here are the different things that we do in the child well-being. Brighter futures, college and career readiness, economic stability, and strong learners. Good afternoon, Commissioner Richardson. These are the areas that we are going to focus on, and the thing that we look at as far as growing strong families in the community. And these are just some comments that we have gotten about this. But this led to something that I'm going to transition to now is the 21-day racial equity challenge that we had. And there were corporate America engaged in this, and we actually had a fund that we put together. I was very involved in this, and we were fortunate to have over 400 people in Cobb County to participate in this particular racial equity event. And so we said, now we have this data from these people, and they want to know what's next. And this is when the Cobb United Way, which I want to say, I want to be a little, cautious in what I say, but I believe we are one of the best in the 13 county United Way boards. We actually are very active. We have a very diverse board. So we said, okay, let's move forward and figure out how do we use this data that we have, and how do we help Cobb, and how do we help, always remember, help our children. How do we help our children? And then how do we help the families? Because you can't help the children if you don't have strong families. So we partnered with Chrysalis Lab, and they are going to now bring you some data on what they learned from this. And then at the end of this, another one of our board members, or a couple of our board members, will talk about what we are going to do next with United Way, with the data, with the information that we have. And with me being around so long and everything, every time I turn around, I meet people that I have worked with for many years. So when we partnered with Chrysalis Labs, who did I meet again other than Leslie Grady, who is a partner in the founding of Chrysalis Lab, and she is going to come up now and tell you about the work that they have done, and then after that, we will have Melanie Brown. Her father and I worked together for over 30 years at Equifax. So it's just people that I know and trust and believe in. So come on up, Leslie.
I think Bill belongs to all of us in this room. Such a treasure to have in Cobb County. Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be here today to speak with you about the work that we've done. It's, as Bill mentioned, my name's Leslie Grady. I'm co-principal of Chrysalis Lab. I'm here with my partner, Kim Anderson, who we'll hear from a little later, co-principal for Chrysalis Lab. Before I move into the presentation, I just want to share what a joy this has been for both Kim and I as longtime Cobb residents, raised our children here. Our children are now establishing their lives here. And so it was a real pleasure to interact with neighbors and friends and shop owners that we've been a part of and connected to every day in doing this work. So a little bit about what the work was. United Way sought to engage a broad swath of opinions, perceptions, aspirations, right, for greater inclusion and prosperity in the county. And so we partnered with them to find many ways to get those voices to the table. Using the data and insight, we then together with the United Way Board developed a set of recommendations. So to begin by ensuring consistent understanding, starting from the same page, we shared the following definitions that you'll see, and I'll pause here so you can read those, so that in every survey and every conversation and focus group, we were able to refer back to this definition for equity, diversity, equity, inclusion, and for a key stakeholder. I'm never good at this. Where am I? Where should I be present?
Just anywhere.
There it is. Okay, thank you. So a little bit about the timeline of activities that we undertook. This began in the spring of 2022. And we began by holding key stakeholder interviews with leaders across all sectors in Cobb County and talking to them about their beliefs, their feelings about our county, about our growth, about our opportunities. Took that back to the United Way Board, and it was from those key stakeholder interviews that we then shaped the community-wide survey that was distributed. We also held a number of focus groups, one again with the Cobb Advisory Board, and then we launched a community-wide survey. I'll give a little more detail on that later. We continued to talk in large groups and small. The next group was with a group of nonprofits, several of whom are here today, more than 15 major nonprofits in Cobb County who talked to us about what they were seeing in their work in the community and what they felt could be opportunities to improve and gain greater access. We hung out, made presentations. Thank you, Dr. McMorris. We visited the county leads and heads. We spoke to the Chamber of Commerce and interacted with them around their DEI committee and hung out at the International Festival, which was a lot of fun, but just talking to folks and gaining additional input. We even learned that towards the end of this work, we weren't getting quite enough representation, we felt, from some areas of Cobb. And so we held a half-day event in which we very strategically brought out over 100 folks to, again, talk about these issues, have presentations, hear the data that had been gathered so far, and then took that information back to the development of recommendations, all the while talking and iterating on the knowledge and everything that we were hearing. So here are the numbers. 447 online community responses, and we'll share a little bit about that later. That number came down from several thousand because we wanted to make sure we were hearing from the right folks that we needed to. 22 one-on-one hour-long interviews, 8 strategic conversations with key current and former elected officials, business owners and leaders and so forth, and 2 focus group discussions. And to make the point that this discovery process is a point in time, clearly, right? It was a point in time that we did this work. Absolutely foundational for understanding where some of the passion and energy is, and directional. But it is the kind of information that we have to keep on going after, seeking. Times change, people change, situations change. So this is not and cannot be a one-time deal for us in this county. A little bit about the community survey. How was it conducted? It was sent to all of the United Way partners, as well as advertised in the Cobb Courier online in both English and Spanish. It was open for 1 month, and we offered incentives of gift cards as well. 94.2 identified as residents of the county and 4.7 working in the county, and then less than 1% planning to move. So there were a lot of people who have opinions about Cobb. We're not surprised, but we wanted to hear from Cobb residents who were living or working here about what their feelings were. How representative? It's totally representative by age. Representative by age and ethnicity, except for the Latino Hispanic community, who were underrepresented by 36 responses. Captured again in English and Spanish, 19 zip codes represented with the following exceptions: a little higher in 30068, and 30075, and underrepresentation in 30102 and 30106. And also women were overrepresented a little bit by 13.8%. So when you look at these stats, these are the representation relative to Cobb statistics. So here's just a map to show you the zip codes that were covered. And you can see, as we said, one in particular had a very heavy representation. So what we hear, do we see that inequities exist in Cobb? 77% of respondents found Cobb to be generally welcoming, while only 58% believe that community members have equal access and opportunity. So that's part of what we reconcile, right? 77% say we are welcoming. 58% say that there's equal access to opportunity and access. The majority of us respondents, 76.8%, feel there should be equity efforts undertaken in Cobb County. Specifically, there were some areas, we asked people about the areas that are you're most passionate about, or you feel like the most challenges and opportunities exist. K-12 education, housing, and public safety. I don't know if that's a surprise to anyone, but it certainly was reinforced in all of our dialogue. When asked who is trusted to advance equity, the top 4 were community groups and nonprofits, faith-based groups and organizations, and those were the source of a lot of those strategic conversations that I mentioned, going back to talk to faith leaders about what does this mean and what are you doing and so forth, and then county government. And then 65% of respondents feel efforts to include greater equity and inclusion should be a high priority for Cobb County government. And so you'll see the issues there. The next 3 were workforce and housing, health, as well as transportation. So key stakeholder feedback, 22 individuals, hour-long interviews, again, leaders around this august board, in this audience, and across the county. Primary feedback was language and communication, and we know that. How we talk, what we say, who we talk to, just getting it right. We're not going to get it right each time, but that's critical, how we talk about this issue, how opening and welcoming it is. Cobb County elected leadership is not aligned on an equity agenda. This came through in the interviews, as well as many interviews perceived there to be a significant disconnect between residents who feel like the Cobb is not equitable as it can be, and those who don't, like there were clear splits and divides. In the focus group, and this was primarily nonprofits, there's a lack of clear strategy behind the county's equity and inclusion efforts, particularly relative to policy. There's no clear, concise definitions of diverse equity and inclusion and what it might entail. So yes, we shared a definition for our dialogues that we had with folks, but the truth is that the definition for Cobb County for what these terms mean, we've got to agree on that. It's not perfect, it's not coming from a textbook, but we've got to agree that this is what we're shooting for and this is what is important. differing perspectives and understanding among county leaders and community. And then nonprofits should lead. They were clear about that because they are mission-driven, address issues in the community, and are focused on issues of equity and inclusion. So I'll just pause here. These were just a couple of comments that we pulled out for your that we thought brought some of these themes to life. So where did that lead us to? Coming out of all of this dialogue and input, both the quantitative and qualitative, we categorized recommendations in 4 areas: listening, learning, leveraging, and leading. Today we're going to, and I'm going to focus on the first 2, listening and learning, because the decision of United Way is that's where we want to start. And so in listening, we're really talking about opportunities, continued opportunities to come together and hear one another and appreciate one another, and appreciate different perspectives and hear what we might not want to hear, right? But how do you begin to put those spaces together where there's equitable listening, which means I'm open to hearing what you say, you're open to hearing what I say, and how do we then begin to move forward to greater understanding that we can share and to find out where our commonalities are as people and who love their county. And that objective would be appreciation and affirmation of all of our residents. And then under learning, forums for shared understanding. When and where and how do we begin to craft our definition and our vision for what we want to happen in this county? How do we learn about it? How do we learn about what others are doing? And how do we gain and grow strong with that? So that's a greater understanding and appreciation on definitions for what we're shooting for. So just a little bit more specific, again, narrowing in on the listening and the learning recommendations. Opportunities for shared dialogue, strategic relationships with trusted voices in the Cobb's Latino and other diverse communities. It's not going to happen with just broad surveys, and I think that most folks will tell you broad surveys are great, but they're broad. And if you really want to hear from communities, then you're gonna have to be specific. So really moving towards some very clear alliances and partnerships in communities that we want to hear from. And then a commitment to focus dialogue about inequities with elected officials and faith communities, because that's who people said they feel should do the work and that they trust. And so following that through. And then under learning, consistent opportunities for training, for sharing, for dialogue, for a better understanding not only of academic terminology, but really our own shared definition of what these terms mean. And then a brain trust. United Way, Bill talked earlier about the child welfare index. I mean, United Way has so much data. And then we did a scan of Cobb organization. There's so much data and so many folks doing really great stuff in this area. But there's no clear path or place to go and see what this school system is doing, what this city is doing. What's United Way got to do with that? How do you begin to pull the data together so that we can start by celebrating and building on what we've already accomplished? So I'm now going to turn it over to Parane, who's going to bring us home. Thank you.
Hello, happy Tuesday. My name is Marini Brown. I serve as the Community Impact Chair of the United Way of Greater Atlanta. So I come to you as a leader on our board, but also a resident of this community, having lived in Cobb County since I was 10, moving here from Southwest Atlanta, now living in District 2. I want to first acknowledge Chrysalis Lab and their great work. And personally, I have a bias towards action. And so I believe that the data is meant to tell us to do something, to get to work, to get dirty. And so we will be starting with the listening and learning recommendations that was shared. We are exploring moderated community conversations for our Cobb residents and stakeholders as shared, for them to share and listen to one another and hopefully gain a greater understanding and increased appreciation and a willingness to listen and ensure that we have opportunities for all within our county. Our goal is for those to start in the late summer or fall. We will also make sure that we are intentional about engaging those trusted voices from the Latino community that was shared, recognizing that there's an opportunity for them to be a part of the work that we're doing and see themselves in the work that's also being considered. We will also make sure that we have these conversations in various areas of part of the county, in parts of the county that are accessible to all, to make space for everyone, and we'll ensure that leaders like you and faith leaders are a part of that conversation. With the focus on training, and to the point mentioned around being consistent in our language and the terms that we use, we're also exploring a quarterly speaker series on equity and inclusion. That's really a part of the learning component that was shared to ensure that we're thinking about training opportunities and have a solid foundation for all. And then as mentioned, that brain trust of Cobb's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts is also being explored, and we are considering adding additional partners to those discussions as well. And so we're excited about this work. This is definitely head work in terms of the data, but I must say that this is hard work for me. And I have a personal investment in what we're doing to make our city one, make our county one that everyone can thrive. So now I will turn it back over to Leslie to entertain questions.
Good afternoon. I'm not Leslie. I'm Kim, Leslie's partner, but I'm pleased to be here. And again, deep gratitude to United Way for asking us to be partner with them on this work, and most importantly, gratitude to all citizens of Cobb who leaned in and joined us in these conversations. So we wanted to open it up for questions, both to Chrysalis and to United Way, and engage in a discussion, particularly with regard to the data and what we learned and what's ahead. So thank you again.
Thank you. I just first want to say thank you for, again, another robust presentation that we've had today, and a robust effort over the past, I believe, year and a half to help us walk through what diversity, equity, inclusion could look like for us in Cobb County. With that, I'm going to turn things over to commissioners to see if they have any comments or questions. And we'll start with Commissioner Gamble.
I do have a statement. Thank you for the presentation today, and I appreciate Bill Cheeks and Nicole Dell meeting with me last week. My comments will be based on perspective, as I believe that until we are willing to sit at a table and view the hand that is telling us to stop or go away, we will never gain a better understanding. Our family has been a long-time supporters of the United Way. However, the report that Chrysalis Lab was politically charged and presented a false narrative on my lack of participation. Our family is disappointed that our funds could be used to further political agendas instead of ensuring children across the 13-county region here in Atlanta can follow their dreams. As a duly elected official of this board, I was never informed that this was a community discovery process, but instead assisting a newly elected chair come into office. However, using one of your 4 L's, leading, this was never communicated to me. I wonder how the Chrysalis Lab report would read if they included my reasons I shared with them in January of 2021 as to why I would not participate. Chrysalis Lab then goes on to define inclusion as the act of creating environments in which any individual or group can feel welcome, respected, supported, and valued to fully participate. I agree with this 100%. However, like myself and many constituents, we have the same interests and concerns, but are often dismissed, or as in my experience with this project, not included because I see things from the other side of the hand that is stopping me. Perspective. The consultants gave summaries based on black and white. But from the list of participants, I did not see any stakeholders that could bring perspective to the statements on graduation rates. I would encourage this board to have a work session with the education consultant, James Wilson, whose company, Education Planners, recently conducted a demographic study for the Cobb school districts. His findings were that test scores do track with whether a student lives in transient or permanent housing. Quote, the quality of test scores with students who stay in one location is typically much higher than students who have moved around in multiple locations, end quote. Knowing this, how would Chrysalis's lab report be changed? And, quote, important note on page 13 from the January 2023 document that was meant for the county, yet sent to the public, quote, Cobb County is a highly polarized political environment. For those unwilling or unprepared to engage in meaningful dialogue on the critical but nuanced concepts of equity and inclusion. It was easy to position this as being political. Perspective of the hand. It's difficult to discuss equity and inclusion when you are intentionally left out of the discussion based on a political party you have to identify with in order to be placed on a ballot. In order for society to move forward, we need to remember that we vote for a candidate only one day every 2 years. After that, political party affiliation should not be the center of discussion, but how do we better a community that we all reside in, regardless of the day's one decision. Change your focus, change your world. We all need to be able to bring different perspectives to the table. After all, that is what saved the astronauts on Apollo 13, who collectively sat together and figured out how to fit a square peg in a round hole. I have and will continue to join the conversation, but then again, the narrative provided by Chrysalis Labs, whether intentional or not, has proven that diversity of thought, equity in value of person, colleague, and inclusion of being able to put your own preferences on hold and have an open mind only continue to create an environment that is dividing, excluding, and exciting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. I know the Commissioner read her statement. Is there anyone that desires to respond to that?
Only thing I will respond on behalf of Chrysalis Lab, I'll let United Way respond, and just say that every single commissioner was invited to meet with a member of our team as well as a member of United Way. And everybody who accepted was interviewed and thoroughly for an hour and some to 2 hours. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner.
And as I said, I shared with Chrysalis why I would not participate in the interview process, but that was never included in your report, which would change the direction of this report as it is given.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Richardson.
Tough to follow. I was actually going to ask a question in relation to that in part. So certainly appreciate all of the effort, outreach, curation of data. I do understand it's head work and hard work, so appreciate that as well. One of the things I really like to do is understand the full body of data that we're looking at. And Cobb is incredibly diverse in when it comes to thought and approach and perspective. And what I'm looking for is to understand, because I know that we have members of our community that are seeking for us to incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion methodologies. But I also know that there are some that have deep reservations and concerns about what that means. And so what I am interested in is knowing what was the feedback from those members of the community who do not want to have diversity, equity, and inclusion methodologies applied within the county. And that I'm just trying to see if there's data around that, because that's important for us to try to bridge a gap. If because there is certainly a gap
So if I understand your question correctly, and I just want to make sure I understand, you wanted any feedback that we received in terms of how to engage more diverse communities, and particularly those who have residency around DEI work in the discussion.
Correct.
And I think that goes to the concept of listening and continue to have conversations, right? This was not a all exhaustive process, right? We welcomed people who wanted to respond, we welcomed people who wanted to have conversation, and we shared the limitations and the breadth of those conversations with you. But the first point is that we have to continue the conversations. We have to have the tough conversations. People who don't typically want to talk to one another need to get in the room together and talk to one another. Emails don't do it. Conversations do it. Breaking bread together do it. Going for a walk together do it. Getting to have the opportunity to talk, to ask those questions, to hear each other back and forth. That's the first step that we raised as a potential recommendation. And it was also commented by those who had some residency or hesitancy to engage in those conversations.
Right. So I I appreciate the methods. Just curious on if there were, because you did have some interviews, and I'm sure that there were interviews or survey results that articulated that there was no desire for any kind of DEI initiatives. And so I was curious on what rationale was provided, what was the insight that was gleaned there, because I think we understood the insight from the communities that would like to see DEI initiatives. I'm trying to understand what data was identified for those that are not interested in seeking DEI initiatives.
So I would say that would have come from more subjective than the objective data, right? So the objective data is I guess relevant in the statistics in terms of people feeling the community was welcoming, wasn't welcoming. In our conversations, because we were able to have conversations, the conversations led to the conversation of having more opportunities to talk more, right? So I don't remember us ever having a conversation with anyone who said they didn't want to at least talk about the potential. What does it mean? How do we go forward? Now, clearly people were on different spectrums on the journey and what that could mean, but everybody was open to having the conversation.
Okay.
Because otherwise they would not have even have met with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sheffield?
Thanks, Chair. I wanted to go back to the Latino community. I attended the community meeting in October, and there was concern at that time that the Latino community was not represented, and I specifically remember addressing that concern and that the invitation had been sent, to the community, but obviously we cannot force anyone to attend. But in one of the slides, it noted that there was a unrepresentation by 36 responses, but the other responses were by percentage, but this was a number. So my question to you is, did people in the Latino community start the responses and just didn't finish? How did you determine that it was 36 responses versus a percentage?
So that was a number based on, if you look proportional on the percentage of Latinos in the community, we would have expected an additional 36 responses.
Okay.
So that they would have been fully represented.
Okay. Also, another slide has that 65% of the respondents feel that efforts to ensure greater equity and inclusion should be a high priority for Cobb County government. Is that to suggest that Cobb County government should focus on incorporating that in the hiring practices, or does that speak to something else?
The question wasn't that specific. It was just raising by sector who should be involved.
Okay. And then one final thing to note, there's another slide also that has that the majority of respondents, which is 76.8, feel that there should be equity efforts undertaken in Cobb County focused on K-12, education, housing, and public safety. And when I look at the map that was shared earlier today, the majority of the responses appear to have come out of East Cobb and Northeast Cobb, so Districts 2 and District 1. In District 4, there were a fair amount of people that responded, but when we talk about the majority, with the 76.8, the majority of those responses were in West and East Cobb. Can you confirm that?
Yes, as
Okay.
I think one of the slides point out that there was a disproportionate representation, particularly from East Cobb.
Okay, so in East Cobb and West Cobb, then, the feeling or the thought is that there should be DEI efforts undertaking in education, housing, and public safety.
Yes, so it's a two-part question, right? So whether you believe that DEI efforts should continue and then in what areas. So we would have to disaggregate the data to look at it by each district to see whether K-12 or housing or other public safety was in particular
Right, but.
zip codes.
Right, and I just want to drive home the point that these concerns are not just in certain areas of Cobb County where most may identify it to be the greater issue. So the point that I'm making, and I want people to understand, is this is a concern across Cobb County, and the 76.8% that responded supports that. But I just appreciate all that you guys have done. I know that it's been a labor of love. I know we have our nonprofits and our stakeholders in the audience, and I thank you personally for taking the time to participate and sharing your responses to help us shape policy around it. So thank you. Thanks.
The work that United Way has done with respect to DE&I is transformative. I believe in the scope of work that United Way has traditionally had in our county with funding nonprofit organizations to meet communities that have particular need. This was a way to look at needs in our community that perhaps are not economic or directly economic, but are looking at the person, the people that live here in Cobb. And when I think of that, I, for one, commend everyone that was a part of this project, because when you are dealing with something that's very people-oriented, it's not a perfect science. And the data is helpful, but I think what's helpful for me is the general policy consideration of what we're really trying to do here. And that is to have a county that, as was articulated in the data, that is welcoming, a county where people feel as if everyone has an opportunity to thrive. And there are some steps that have been presented to us today that could help us get there. Recognizing, again, it's not a perfect science. And I believe in my heart of hearts, most people want for us to get there. That's from my heart, but the data that you presented also shares that. But even in the prior presentation with the Atlanta Regional Commission, they emphasize that if you are not focusing on equity, you are less competitive for investment. And I think that's a long overdue consideration as to how public monies are invested in communities and who has the opportunity to move forward as investment reflects the value. Investment reflects value. And so I appreciate overall the work that has been done, because it was really courageous work to have this conversation here when we typically don't have this conversation here. And there's such varied perspectives on this. As Marini shared, I too share her bent for action, and I think there's opportunity for us here. And this is not just opportunity for our board. When I first joined the board for Cobb County, we had a community relations council that was started by a former chair, I think in his recognition that Cobb has opportunity. So I really I mean, I said this was perhaps a transformative thing, but it's not a new thing for us to consider this. I think it's an intentional way for us to revisit this, particularly in this day and time. And so I'm hoping that even with the numbers shared and the questions shared, that there's an overarching interest in seeing how this can help us as a county to be more welcoming of everyone and to be able to give everyone an opportunity to thrive here. There's some things that Cobb is doing already, and I just wanted to highlight that. In our past board, there was a position created. It wasn't funded for a DE&I officer. So our board funded it in the first budget that we came together to support. And so that's a significant step for us to look at DE&I inside Cobb County government organization and beyond. There's also work we've been doing on procurement, and I want to thank you for partnering with, we had students from Georgia State also help look at our procurement practices to see, are we being inclusive in giving all of our businesses a fair economic shot to have access to opportunity here. And so today, there's a modernization effort in our purchasing department that includes reaching out to, specifically to what's considered DBEs, women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, and also disabled veteran businesses. And that's not even a new thing. Because when we built the stadium, the first time I remember us really having that conversation was when we were talking about the participation on that project. But it didn't even start there. We were having that conversation when it comes to transportation because the federal government requires consideration of DBE participation when we get federal dollars. So as much as this is transformative for us, I see this as reshaping and perhaps re-energizing how we consider this. So I want you to share as a resident of Cobb for over 20 years, and as chair, I see tremendous opportunity that we have with what we have today. I think what we have is an open door, because I think I've heard that you're opening the door for anybody who wants to participate still, that those conversations that we need to be having with various people, that they can have a seat at the table. And then the second opportunity is for there to be a brain trust, that we already have people doing this work in the county, and we have opportunity to highlight that and to see who are moving things forward. And those are things that I would love to get behind, because for me, it's very important to be able to serve all that are here. And there are some ways that could be opened for me and also our departments to be able to serve everyone. So I'm excited about this presentation. I'm excited about United Way's investment of time and of energy and of heart, because again, this was not an easy undertaking, particularly in light of the climate that we're in. But it can, sometimes the hard things help us to get to the most transformational things. And we just gotta, I think, look at the opportunity on the other side of these tough questions and sometimes a tough response to see where are we really trying to go. And I'm excited about where we can get with this information that we have here today. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and wish you each individually and collectively good travels on the journey to make everyone in Cobb feel welcome with each one of you individually and collectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, United Way. Thank you, all of you, board members. Thank you, Bill, for kicking us off today. It's such a pleasure to see you and to have your energy behind this as a longtime resident, but somebody who I think has just been supportive of Cobb over the years. So thank you, all of you. With that, commissioners, our board meeting, or our work session for today is adjourned, and we'll be coming back tonight at 7:00 p.m. for our Board of Commissioners meeting. Thank you.